All right. Well, what is going on, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning in yet again. As the title of the video states, I know that this is something I've kind of posted about, but maybe not everyone has actually seen the post itself yet or seen me discuss it in some of my other previous videos. But can't believe I'm saying this, but Mr. Brain is officially back, and welcome, man.
I'm actually glad to be back. A lot has changed. A lot is it's given me a lot to look into. That's for sure, and I'm definitely interested into diving into some of the questions that people have been asking in my absence or since I've come back.
Oh yeah, man. There has been no lack of questions, and actually, that's kind of where this has come from. To kind of give some backstory to everybody on what this series is going to be like moving forward. Essentially, oh gosh, I mean, ever since like Brain started his channel, and I enjoyed working with him on his channel and making the videos that he has created. And doing a lot of the deep dives that we did way back when, we got questions from everybody, from every which player power and such, from every which region, and the questions never really stopped. I know that you stepped away from the game for a bit, and it's, again, it's great to have you back and everything, but again, the questions never really stop coming. And so this series is really just a chance to kind of give everybody a little bit of insight and peel back the cover on how it is that both Brain and I maybe evaluate things, of the different questions that the community as a whole has directed us, whether it be in game or in channel comments on Discord, those types of things. So I know that there's been a lot of excitement, at least from those that have seen the post, where I announced that this series was coming. And I appreciate you taking time to do this. I know this is something we do anyways. We stay up plenty of nights late, just trying to unravel everything, really everything Doomsday, to understand everything that's kind of happening behind closed doors, and maybe things that aren't addressed right off the bat, or isn't really verbally or visually, I guess I would say, like, obvious. I mean, I think we've seen it plenty of times where something is stated one way, and based on the way that it is stated, you think the behavior is going to act a certain direction or behave a certain way, and you go and test it and come to find out that's just simply not the case at all.
No, absolutely not. IGG has definitely dropped the ball in some cases with that, and we've had to not only correct them but correct their developers on what is actually happening. I'm like,
Oh God. Yeah.
thankfully, we know how to read a report.
Yeah, that has been probably the peak of our IGG experience, has been arguing with the developers directly on them stating that something is working properly and providing proof that it isn't. And then I think it really took us posting a video to the community to like get some traction and get them to be like, "Oh yeah, that is a problem. Here's 100 diamonds. Thank you for figuring out." So,
And then not fixing that problem.
yeah, half fixing it. Two of the heroes work properly. The other one is still sad Miyamoto. So we did take some of the questions that were kind of directed our way. I had some questions messaged to my inbox. I decided to pull 5 of them this go around. We're really going to keep it open forum. There's not really going to be any structure to this episode series that we're going to be doing. It's really just going to be a raw experience where we can dive into the questions themselves, really have a chance to just kind of elaborate on them. And that way, again, you really get the initial experience on what it is and how we address the questions that are provided to us, and really our thought process and diving into those things. So again, not too much structure on it. After we finish through with the questions, we'll kind of freeball it, I guess, or spitball it, and just see where it kind of takes us, and we'll do that week to week. But without further ado, looks like the first question here is, hey Z and Brain, I'd like to propose a question for the collab. How do you see the game's development, current and developing meta, and the very future of the game, perhaps in light of the similar games in the market? I know that you've played a lot of games as well, so I'll kind of let you start with that one, really.
Yeah, I remember starting back with Rise of Kingdoms back when it first came out years ago,
Mm-hmm.
um, and all of the different things that they'd been trying to kind of keep things balanced in that game.
Oh yeah.
I had to step away from that because of all of the different ways they were trying to balance the game,
Oh
which
yeah.
just ended up being stacking one thing on top of another, that thing becoming the meta, and then, oh, wait, okay, we made it too strong. Instead of addressing that issue, they would make a new thing that could check the last one. But
Yep.
just just the toppling house of cards. Thankfully, they've kind of pulled away. The developers of Rise of Kingdoms have kind of pulled away from ROK in general towards their new game Call of Dragons, which the
Yeah.
concept of that one is phenomenal, but I still think they're lacking in balancing issues.
Absolutely.
Um, We also have other games like State of Survival, a couple other video game based games. I know Warhammer and Final Fantasy both came out with this style of game that are might as well just be carbon copies. But
Yeah,
honestly,
that seems to be the
yeah, that just seems to be the case with this kind of game over the last few years. However, as far as this game is concerned, it is finding interesting ways of uh, trying to reach out to its players to figure out what they can do better. And in certain cases, the heroes that they come out with are interesting in their own right. I know with the silence mechanic from Julia, with um, the new hero Chasey introducing basic attack as a form of actual damage. I do feel like they're still showing that they can provide something new to the game as moving forward. So I'm definitely curious what the next infantry heroes are going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually going to kind of touch base on the same thing. I guess to give a little bit of my background as well. In a similar boat. I've played games like this for pretty much a decade now. I think the very first one that I remember is was it Game of War, or I can't remember what it was even called now. That was like I played that one for probably like a year, and then after that I played Mobile Strike when that one came out and played that one for a good while as well. And then it felt like I kind of just kept shifting game to game. I know someone pointed out the name of it. I won't remember it now. There was like a pirate game that was very similar. I know that those games at least were a little bit different in a sense where it's like you just send off your rallies, you send off your attacks on enemy bases and stuff, and then it was like an instant report back. You weren't fighting in the field with like the mobility troops and stuff. That didn't start for me until Rise of Kingdoms as well. But yeah, I think that I had a lot of the same similar issues in Rise of Kingdoms, and I know that they, or at least the what do they call them in that game, Kraken, or maybe that's Call of Dragons. I get confused because I enjoyed that game as well now. But yeah, I know that the big spenders in that game, like really, like you said, it was kind of just like something came out, it was overtuned, and then rather than addressing that, they would just overtune the next mechanic to, kind of shut down the last one or suppress it a bit. But then anybody that had the money for it would just invest into that next thing and kind of take off from there. I know that we've seen similar aspects, at least in Doomsday, with like say the garage, for example. I know that a lot of people are not the happiest with the new cap on garages where they doubled the values of the levels and such that you can get in there, or at least like the values that you can get for like the base stats and the overall. I think like the peak firepower was back or when it first came out like 2250 or something, and now it's like over 5,000, I believe, which is pretty crazy. But at the same time too, though, I do appreciate the fact that they are attempting to find different avenues to allow the big spenders to spend without punishing all players in that sense. Because I remember for the longest time, I think that we spent probably the better part of a year where at least when even in Region 6, when we left Region 6 and came to Region 164, we were consistently trying to cut down in power to get out of G1 and G2.
We kept
Because
getting punished by getting in G1, G2, or G3.
yeah, man. I mean, like I think we were like at like 11 or 12 bill at one point. We cut it all the way down to like 6 bill or sub 6 bill. And instead of being like a lead alliance in those brackets, we all of a sudden just found ourselves as the filler alliances. And that just became equally frustrating and stuff for us. And then I know that a lot of that changed when they recently brought out within the last couple of months the new mechanics, like in Genesis War, sorry, for really just registering based on the alliance power and then grouping based on those brackets. Again, I also do appreciate the fact that depending on what I guess bracket you get put into changes the rewards that you're going to get. Obviously, if you're going to register in like one of the, I guess the Apex bracket, it makes more sense to get better rewards. And so again, yeah, I think that while it's not perfect, I think that it's definitely steps in the right direction that I haven't seen many other games do. It obviously still tailors a lot of the game to pay to win players and pay to spend, but again, it's a business, it's a game, mobile games and such. If you've been around in the community and been around these types of games, you are no stranger to it. You know that this is just simply going to happen. So the fact that they're opening avenues to where you can kind of avoid those big spenders and those that will have maxed out garages here in the next bit, I think at least is a positive thing in my eyes.
Yeah, and just to make sure that we touch on that, one of the things I have enjoyed about this game is how well the open region changes have been.
Yeah.
Being able to hop into a completely different region in order to try and avoid the the G1, G5 situation, so that you can be with your group of friends, because it's still a social game,
Hmm.
and play at the level that you should be playing at, instead of being stuck in Azure or Crimson with the
Sure.
big dogs when you don't need to be.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
you can you can keep up with them. I'm still under 100 million.
Yeah, I mean, you did take a little bit of a pause there, but yeah, we have been chasing for a while again, getting out of that G1 to 3. So I think that you coming back at a time where they did introduce the separation of brackets and us, kind of being able to drop down one bracket from Apex to, I think it's like the Elite or whatever the second one is, will definitely allow for you to kind of still be able to play at pace and stuff. I think you might have seen that for the first time in this
Oh yeah.
Genesis War. I think that was the first time you've been able to actually like play on the field and actually play in a KVK event. So
It
yeah,
was.
no, yeah, it's definitely nice to have those types of things too, even for like returning players to not feel like they're completely left behind. I guess kind of as a wrap up note on that as well, because I know that like with the migration system, I know that even for the longest time, especially when it first came out, and even till today, it's gotten a lot of bad rep. But I think a lot of people kind of don't realize like how expensive it was to join the Titan alliances back in the day. I remember back in the day, like we started in Region 23, we migrated to Region 7, then to Region 6, and then eventually Region 164 after the new migration system came out. But man, when it came from 23 to 7, and then especially from 7 to 6 when we wanted to join you guys, I remember how pricey that was because I had just broken 100 mil at that time, and holy cow, man! Like it was like not only was it expensive, but like you had to like pace it out because there were only so many migration orders you could get. So I get that like it can hurt the community in terms of like joining a region, and then you used to be able to take over TC and stuff, which obviously they've made that like cross regional now, and there's thoughts on that. But in that sense, it hurts the community. But at the same time, too, like a lot of these alliances, like ROK, Apex, SSI, H&B, all of these, it's been a huge benefit to them to allow those whale type players to go into those alliances and really just tighten together. And for other players that maybe want to attempt to see if they're capable to play at that caliber, have the opportunity to do so without having to break their bank account and then realize it's not for them, and then now they're stuck. Because I remember that used to
Right.
happen a lot as well.
Oh, absolutely. It definitely happened a lot. And I imagine that there's still going to be some people down in the lower regions, 500 plus, that are still having a little bit of animosity towards the
Oh,
migration
sure,
event.
sure.
But to everyone else, especially the lower spenders that were already well established in the game, it was definitely a way for them to get out of situations that they were in, or find themselves in a better group of people that they could actually compete in the events with.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess on my end, as a personal note, to wrap up the first question, because I know I see here that talk about like the developing meta and the future of the game and such. Right before Brain left, I remember it was when Julia and Bard. I think Bard had just came out, and I mean myself and Brain were both Garrison main players, and that's been like our bread and butter really. And I just remember how frustrating it was because, they brought out the silence, which was already going to shut down Thunder, which was already going to shut down Rigoro because we didn't have Riven at the time. And, or maybe we did have Riven. But, anyways, that wasn't like too prominent at the time yet. And that silence mechanic just really I remember for like a good 60 days or so, like was just the hardest and the worst thing to do. And I think that was probably the peak of the hardest time that we were having competing in G1 to 2 was simply that because we played around my Garrison, and the fact that I was just getting silenced out the door, and that was back when silences could stack and stuff.
Hmm.
It was a mechanic that was brought in, and usually when you introduce a mechanic to the game, you need to have some form of a counter mechanic to it, to where it's not just completely dominant. Maybe give it a bit of time to dominate or whatever have you until you can figure out the meta or figure out how to adjust to that. But there was simply no way to not only counter the silence itself, but then the additional, like, what was it, like 60% skill damage or something that Bard was bringing to the table. It
Oh,
was,
yeah.
yeah, Garrison's was just, it was not a fun time for a bit there. And so there's definitely been a shift in the meta and the way that rallies are played and the way that rallies happen now because of those new introductions of mechanics. But then the fact that they bring out things like Chasey and things like Riven, where both of them, you proc their rage skill and then they proc over the next few seconds as well. So even if you are silenced, it's still doing continuous damage. I think at least it is a good way to shift the meta in a healthy way.
Oh, it absolutely is. Chasey, or yeah, like you said, Chasey is a great example of being able to counter Julia without directly saying so. While one of her skills does give the additional basic attack per turn for the duration of the effect,
Hmm.
that's not the hardest check to her. It's the fact that silencing Chasey doesn't do anything really to her attack damage. Eventually, her
Right.
skill is going to get off. Then she's
Correct.
going to deal that basic attack damage over the course of the next 5 seconds, and Julia has no answer to that level of consistent damage.
Not to mention when you do silence that garrison, Chasey has the second side of it to where she benefits from that.
Yeah, and she will benefit from it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess the best way to answer that question for the meta for me would be to let people know they are paying attention to how we fight in these
Sure.
events, and
Sure.
they're working to try and make things interesting against who we use in combat. If we use
Yeah.
a lot of Julia, they give an answer to Julia. If we use a lot of Thunder, which we did for quite a while when he came out, they try to find answers to Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
So pay attention to how the bigger players are fighting, and you can get an idea of what the next heroes that come out are probably going.
Very much so.
I would not be surprised with how dominating Chasey can be in both garrison and on the field with basic attack damage. We see an infantry hero that reduces basic attack damage by a significant amount
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
some of
That's
the
what I'm thinking as well too. Even if it's like a tank rally role for sure.
Yeah.
I think that bridges probably into the second question pretty well, actually, because the second question here is for skill trigger rates and reports and the breakdown of how armaments affect each fight. Now, I know that this is something that we've recently been addressing as well, so I'll let you go ahead and kind of take the lead on that too.
Are we talking specifically the active skills of our heroes, or are we talking the talents
I would
that we?
assume in this one with skill trigger rates, maybe that's as a whole, both passively and the rage skill itself, and then the breakdown of how armaments affect each fight, I guess would just really be like how much the weight of those kind of falls in, which I guess that's kind of two parted because obviously lethality and
Yeah.
block is a multiplier. Attack defense is more of your base damage itself, and then attack or basic attack, counter damage, skill damage, flat damage, and such is also going to be a little bit more of a multiplier instead on top of your base damage.
Okay. Well, if anyone's looked at my past videos from months ago, the skill trigger rates or the skill cycle, as I call it, do differ between each hero, and it's based on how the hero generates rage. Over throughout combats, you're going to generate a base level of rage, which, if you're in combat in a 1v1, it turns out to be like 100 rage per turn. We have talents, we have skills, we have certain armaments that give us additional rage during combat to try and lower that amount. You're trying to go for your active skills activating anywhere between 6 and 8 seconds on average is what we're going to see, and
Yeah,
we're starting to see ones that activate before that. But the goal was to get it somewhere between 6 and 8 for your teams, or else it's just not activating enough for it to be truly useful.
correct.
Um, I know with Julia, for example, since her silence works for a 3 second period, if your skills aren't activating at minimum 6 or 7 seconds, then over 50% of the time you're not getting that silence effect, and it might as well be, pointless.
Absolutely.
Um, but as far as the talents are concerned, uh, the trigger rates for those are fairly consistent. For example, the skill trigger. Let me get the actual wording of that one up. Squads have a 10% chance to gain 120 rage when using basic attacks. Those do work exactly as intended. I currently haven't found one that activates on a timer like some of the skills do. So you can have these stack up on top. Well, not on top of each other, but uh, you can 1 second right after another,
Yeah.
and then you can have ones from, for example, the infantry tree. The most common one I run into, infantry guard. Trying to remember where all this stuff is. When leading only infantry squads, has a 10% chance to reduce damage taken by 20% for 2 seconds when attacked. That can activate 1 second right after another. Now they
Yep.
don't stack, sadly, but you can still keep that reduction in damage going, um, however many times it activates.
Yeah.
For the next 2 seconds, your damage is reduced by 20%. So, thankfully, the talents are very straightforward. The skill activation ones are a toss up.
Yeah.
For the passive ones specifically, I could go into each hero individually and point out which ones activate the way they're supposed to and which ones likely don't.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if you would like me to do that
I think that's
for
an
each
idea
year.
for your video to come back, honestly. I think that's
Because
something.
yeah, we've got yeah, because even like Raigoro, he's got one that supposedly only triggers once in 10 seconds. Um, but even so, it only triggers on a single person that is attacking him. So
Yeah.
already that's a lot more downplayed than what it would make it sound like. But you've also got ones like Chasey, who wait, which one is hers that I was looking into just earlier today? Basic attacks have a 10% chance to deal a bonus damage factor. Was it that one or the one where they can stack additional basic attacks? One of the ones that Chasey has allows you to stack additional damage on in her combat, and that one there's no timer on it, so it can just keep going.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that actually bridges well into the third question that we have, which is there a way to break down how talent trees work? Particularly interested in the percentage-based talents. I think that with a lot of the actual talents themselves, especially when you're looking at the ones that trigger, a lot of those are triggering obviously based off of a skill usage, a basic attack, or a counter attack, right? Like those are going to be your three triggers in a combat scenario that trigger those talents essentially from working. And the thing that comes to mind, to me at least, when I was building out my talent trees, the one that really comes to mind, at least on my end, is when running an armament. So the two armament pieces that I'm thinking of is the cloak itself, the fifth hone on the cloak on the device, makes it to where every time you receive a heal, you get like 60 rage. And then on the pants, the superb pants, when an enemy is debuffed, it increases your basic attack damage to them. Now, Raigoro, he does a movement speed debuff, I think, on counterattacks, but then he doesn't
Yeah,
actually have
whenever
a
you
heal itself. However, in my talent trees, because I have the cloak itself, the cloak, it's like basic skill or whatever, the skill that's actually attached to the cloak itself there, it triggers a heal every 10 seconds, but the cooldown on that rage is every 6 seconds. So what I inclined myself to do at that point is I looked at the talent tree, and in the, I think it's the defense tree, right? Where in the
yep,
defense
medical
tree,
supply.
yeah, medical supply, or yeah, medicine supply. Where every single time you use a rage skill, it heals you for 120 just by having 1 point in that skill or in that talent. Now, every talent point you put in only increases that heal itself. Now, the heal requirement on the armament for the cloak to get the additional rage doesn't have a requirement for the number of health that you need to heal. It just says when a heal is triggered. And if I know that Raigoro is going to trigger his rage skill every 6 to 7 seconds max, then I know that rage skill, basically, when it triggers every 6 seconds, will proc a heal in my talents because it's healing you every single time a rage skill is used. And then because the actual rage generation on my armament device on my cloak has a 6 second cooldown, I can essentially trigger that fifth slot hone rare, or rare hone, sorry, fifth slot rare hone, to give me the 60 extra rage every 6 seconds based on that talent instead of every 10 seconds based on the armament itself. On top of that, when you look at like the infantry tree, for example, let me pull it up here. It has the speed cut, so squads have a 10% chance to reduce the target's travel speed by 5% for 2 seconds when using basic attacks. Every additional point you put in there increases the reduction in the movement speed itself, but all I need is 1 point, because now what I'm doing is I have now a 10% chance on every single basic attack that I'm using in Garrison to trigger that speed debuff on the enemy. And so by having that talent basically, or just 1 point in there, I'm effectively putting another debuff on them, or having a chance to trigger another debuff that stacks alongside other debuffs that I'm providing or putting on them to gain the additional basic attack damage from my fifth rare hone slot on my pants, which is the bonus basic attack damage to squads that are affected by a debuff, basically.
Yes, so that does work entirely the way you said it does. Just know that the effect doesn't stack when you have
Correct.
multiple debuffs on there. And if I remember from looking at your reports, you're fairly good at stacking debuffs with most of your stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
when I look at my talents, essentially, one of the main things that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get something that triggers on a skill triggers on a basic attack and triggers on a counter attack, right? Because instead of stacking them or making it to where a basic attack might trigger one of three things, I'm dealing a counter attack and a basic attack every single turn. And then obviously on top of that as well, every sixth turn or fifth turn or seventh turn, there's also a skill involved in that mix. So if I can increase or spread out the amount of benefits that I can get by increasing essentially my footprint of bonuses that I can get by each of those turns or actions, to me, that's the biggest benefit, at least.
Oh, absolutely right. You want to keep 100% uptime on the debuffs for that one in particular, just so that you can count that as like a guaranteed bonus for you. And
Correct.
and since it does proc off of every single kind of debuff out there, just know that you won't necessarily need it in group field fights because
Mm-hmm.
of all of the different debuffs that are going to be going around on all of your different enemies.
Exactly.
But for rallies or for garrison capabilities, absolutely have those debuffs just
Yeah.
so you can make sure you're focusing them on the target that you want to kill first.
Yeah, we're definitely very limited in that sense for where we can apply those. I think that I'm going to go out of order here. And actually, the fifth question that we got is I've always been curious in any given battle how much damage the rage skills do as a percentage of the total. Obviously, changes with hero and troop type, but any ballpark figure would be interesting. Now, this is something that I know that me and you've been working on for a while, and you've kind of cracked the matrix, really.
You kept me up till like 1:30 in the morning working on this. I didn't realize how long I'd been up. Um, No, but I actually just sat down and started working on it, worked backwards because what we were trying to work on was trying to figure out exactly how much firepower impacted, the report. So I was just looking at basic attack damage and trying to figure out exactly how each of the stats affected combat, because I could take everything else out of the equation by removing armaments. I would just have the firepower and my troop stats. And I finally worked out about where your base level of damage is going to be. Now, and it ends up being a calculation of your attack, the amount of troops that you have, and then your enemy's defense and HP factored in. I
And troop tier type.
it, the troop tier type affects the base attack, defense, and HP of the stats that you're bringing forward anyway.
Correct.
But the amount of troops does have a separate coefficient. I won't go into that in this video, but basically, you have a base level of damage that you can deal.
Mm-hmm.
Then your squad damage, your regular damage buffs, your skill damage buffs, uh, firepower, lethality, all of that starts to factor in at that point. But the easiest way to think of skill damage is to take your basic attack damage and count that as a 1,000 damage factor. Once you remove the basic attack damage buffs from that number, say you have a 20% damage buff to basic attack damage. I won't bring Chasey into this, she makes things complicated. But if you remove that 20% from the basic attack damage, and then say you are dealing 10,000 damage factor with the skill damage, you would take that basic attack damage and multiply it by 10. So in the report, the numbers will feel a little bit off because it's tricky to get the percentage buffs to each damage type
Mm-hmm.
factored in correctly. But what it ends up being for skill specific is finding out where your base damage is, multiplying that by the damage factor, which ends up, if your base damage is 1,000, skill damage is 10,000, multiply that by 10, and then factor in your skill damage buffs and your overall damage buffs.
Mm-hmm.
Those would happen
Yeah.
after the fact.
I think.
So,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
so if you want a ballpark answer, go into your report, look at your basic attack damage, imagine that's 1,000, and then look at the skill damage for the hero that you're using right there, and 1,000 to, I guess, like in Lewis's case, 12,000. Multiply it by 12, you have a ballpark answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say I think that like for like the normal player, I think the easiest way to see that even is to just rally something or join a rally, especially like a Julia rally or someone that's gonna hit hard with skill damage, and then just take a look at your combat log because you can see how many troops you're killing off on each basic and counter attack, and then also
Mhm.
just pay attention to how many troops are being killed off every single time that skill triggers because it's usually around 10 like a 10 times multiplier. Now obviously given the defenses of the garrison itself or how strong the rally is or what that combination looks like, it could be anywhere up to like a 15 multiplier, it could be like an 8 multiplier, whatever it may be. You run into some heroes like a Chasey garrison, for example, that cuts skill damage by a ton. You might run into something like a Thunder garrison that cuts your basic attack damage by a ton. So there's definitely like fluctuating numbers there. But skill damage usually does somewhere between, I would again, right in that range, anywhere between like 8 to 12 times the amount of your basic attacks in terms of like total troop kill off. And
Mhm.
yes, it's definitely in majority of cases going to be the biggest factor for your damage. Not even applying the fact that you might just be like a second or third rally, and all you're taking is counter damage. You're not taking skill damage because usually most garrisons are single target on target damage for their skills. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're not taking skill damage. You're not taking counter damage and those types of things as well. So your troops aren't dying off nearly as quickly, and so you're usually dealing a lot of raw skill damage anyways. And so, yeah, I would say that, oh gosh, like in terms of like a total percentage, it would be kind of hard to pinpoint that. But again, yeah, the easiest way to probably look at that is just go to combat log, check how many troops you're killing on each basic attack, and then really just take a look at how many troops you're killing off on a skill damage basis. And if you're using a skill damage based hero like Louis, Julia, Bard, those types of things, Bella, that going down that route, it's usually again like what Brain said about 10 times the amount. And let's see here. I think that probably covers that pretty well. Just make sure in each troop type, any ballpark figure. Okay, yeah. So I think we've covered that. Now, our last question here that to cover is kind of two-parted. I'll read the whole thing. But the one question I'd like to know is how much stronger is the rare hone attribute on legendary armaments than the max attribute of each type? So for those wondering, that's the rare 5th hone slot on superb armaments as opposed to a red hone on each of the other slots, or even just a normal red hone on the 5th slot. And the difference that they make, I think that mid-tier spenders would be keen to understand what are the best values for money packs that they should be focusing on for the biggest bang for your buck, percentage gain, and money spent. I can definitely touch base on the second one, and I'll go ahead and address that first. In terms of the first one about the actual hone attributes, I think we can both kind of talk about that.
Yeah,
If
you have definitely a lot more experience with the hone attributes than I do because I don't even have one of the rare hone attributes on mine yet.
yeah. So
I mean, you've
I'm
you've
happy to
definitely
touch
told me
those.
about quite a few of them.
I think that for me, so I'll address the second part of the question first. So essentially, like what packs are best for your bang for your buck. So when it comes to vehicles in your garages, I think everybody that has invested in that can vouch for the fact that the Julia event is, or the Julia card event is probably going to be your best bet. I know that there's a lot of opportunities to get the different parts to raise your garages and stuff, but the Julia one seems to be the best because it, like, for every amount of cards that you draw or whatever have you, unlocks like those free gift boxes or whatever have you. And I believe when I did the math, and you actually like unlock all of those boxes as a whole at the top, so I think you have to open up like 800 or use 600 or 800 cards or something. I think that when you unlock all those boxes, when you compare the value of what you get to buying packs, like normal packs, it comes out to like $200 in packs that you get for free. So that, I mean, excuse me, but if you're giving me cash back or anything like that, it's pretty appealing. So for me, if you're going to invest in something, do it in something that's going to pay you additional as well. So that would be where I go for the garage. For armaments, it's kind of fairly split up. I know that the elevator event is a really good one for your devices, and that one usually is a pretty good bang for your buck. It is very luck involved, but there's been plenty of times that I've hit, like on the 4th floor or on each floor, really,
Mhm.
hitting the final reward or whatever have you, your main reward, on like the first draw or within 5 or whatever have you. So some events it might cost a little bit more, but in some events it could cost a lot less. So I've usually seen pretty good luck there. I know that I've seen a lot of people have good luck on that as well. So that one's pretty good for like your devices. In terms of like the honing, definitely wait for the honing event itself. Even if you're,
Oh yeah.
buying purple hones or whatever have you from the other things, spending your purple hones on that event itself, so then you can just at the very least, even if you're not going to place in the rank, at the very least get the guaranteed red hones from the from the actual just milestones themselves is a really good event as well. Again, I like personally spending my stuff when I can get free stuff in return. Now, as for those guaranteed red hones, this is usually what I advise to everybody, is that when you get those, spend them only on your gold devices. And the reason for
Oh,
that,
good lord! I couldn't imagine using them on anything but.
the reason for that, for anybody that might be wondering why, is because your gold devices are the only armaments that can roll squad damage or squad damage reduction. And those hones themselves are much stronger than every other attribute that you can possibly hone. You see that because, like, in my armaments, for example, I'm rolling with red hones on all of my hone slots except for on my devices, where I believe I have one 3.6% and one 3.7% squad damage and squad damage reduction. The reason why those aren't red is because that 3.6, even though it's the max value is 5%, and so it's not red, that 3.6 and 3.7% value is actually more power to my armament set, like as a flat numerical number. It's actually a stronger value than getting a red, say, red rally skill damage or garrison skill damage or squad attack, anything like that. So for me, if I'm going to get a guaranteed red hone device or fragment or whatever have you that you're going to use, and it guarantees a red hone, I'm going to use it on those because you're definitely not guaranteed to hit it, and it's very small in your chance. But for me, if there's a chance, I'm going to take it. And I've already had it hit twice before, where I've used that on my devices and hit a squad damage or red squad damage reduction, and it pays much more dividends. Like, if you're going to play the lotto that pays the most, kind of a thing. You know, you're already playing the lotto, playing with hones anyways. You might as well go for something that's going to give you your best possible attribute. So I think that covers the devices, the armaments, and the garages. For parts, definitely the brandy event, 100%, because you can get a lot of free brandies from just doing normal day-to-day stuff, and then you can use diamonds as well, and then the packs themselves also that you can use on those. It's just a really good return for what you're investing in, because when you look at all the rest of the packs for getting parts pieces to get your equipment parts up, they just don't nearly or remotely give, in terms of like value of what you're getting back, the same amount that you can get from the brandy ones. So brandy, the elevator event, the secret armory is really good, the honing event, and then the Julie event, I think, covers that part of the question.
Which, by the way, does our secret armory table still work, or did they change the drop rates for?
So the thing that they have changed with Secret Armory is they've made it now to where you can target like a specific subset that you want. So when you're going through the packs themselves and you have a chance to get, a full armament piece or whatever have you, instead of making it completely random, you can select that you want to prioritize, say, rider pieces or range pieces and that kind of stuff, and it'll proc those ones much more often. So that's kind of been the only thing that's changed. I haven't tested it to see how much it changes the percentages, though, on the actual trigger rates of getting those.
Yeah, I would just need to see one in order to change that Excel sheet. But either way, if they allow you to choose at least the set, as
Yeah.
opposed to just dealing with random, that definitely changes the motivation to choosing
Oh, for sure.
one way or another. Because I think we had worked it out for just just trying to get all of these Supreme boxes and keep hitting refresh until we run out, or just opening every box and getting the free refresh. And
It was
depending
painful.
on, yeah, it was painful either way, but at least one way got you full sets of gear that you could actually use, as
Sure.
opposed to luck of the draw, getting a lot, but luck of the draw.
Yeah, yeah. I know that we've been working on trying to figure out how to optimize that to maximize your rewards. So I think, yeah, that'll be something we'll have to touch base on again and readdress or revisit. And then I'm sure that you could probably even re-release that to the community. Circling back real quick, actually, to the armament side, because I know that there was one half to this question, basically the rare hone attributes. Now, the rare hone attributes is kind of a unique situation or scenario for myself. I think that there's two ways to look at this, because there's two ways that people go about this. Before I go into that, my mentality is that high power but empty power is not something that I chase. So what I mean by that is, just because I get a red squad travel speed hone on my infantry garrison set to replace a yellow or a gold 40 infantry lethality, just because it's going to give me more power in terms of a numerical number, does not mean it's going to give me more power in the role that I'm looking after, right? Because that actual hone itself does nothing for me on garrison, as opposed to the actual lethality hone that I have that's not red but is 40, actually is giving me some form of a benefit. So I look at the rare hones themselves on a role basis for case to case. And what I mean by that in particular is I'll just go ahead and pull one up here. So I know that I've been working on my Julia rally set. And this one in particular, the reason why this is a bit interesting, or how I'm going to, I guess, essentially address this, is because there's a few actual rare hones that benefit very much so the rally itself, as opposed to just taking a flat red hone in its place. So when I take a look at the chest piece, for example, the rare hone on the chest piece is that basic attacks have a 20% chance to grant 40 additional rage. This effect can be triggered only once in 6 seconds. Now, my mindset with this is that, okay, it doesn't matter whether I'm the first rally, the second rally, or third rally, my rare hones need to be working for me at all times. Now, I know that if I'm a second or third rally, I'm never going to be dealing counterattack damage. I'm going to be taking counterattack damage, and I'm always going to be dealing basic attack and skill damage. So I need to look for things that are going to trigger on me taking counter damage, me dealing basic attack damage, or me dealing skill damage. So when I look at like the chest piece rare hone, where basic attacks have a chance to trigger it, perfect. That's going to work for me. I'm going to take that rare hone. When I look at the backpack rare hone, for example, though, it's triggering on counterattacks. So counterattacks have a 20% chance to reduce the enemy's attack by 25% for 2 seconds. Now, while that's a great hone, unless I'm the main rally, which as a ranged rally I usually don't want to be anyways, unless I'm the main rally, I'm never going to deal counterattacks. So this is empty power. It's going to give me a lot of power in terms of my armament set as a numerical number, but if I attack a tower as a second or third rally, I'm never going to actually trigger this, so it's doing nothing for me. So I've actually instead opted to take a red range squad lethality hone instead, which is going to benefit me no matter which order I'm in. Pants is another example, increases basic attack damage for skills with debuffs, on squads with debuffs, so I'm silencing them, so that's going to increase my basic attack damage, which I'm dealing, so I'm going to take that. The hat, the rare hone attribute, is when taking skill damage, immediately deal damage back. Again, second or third rally, I may not be taking skill damage because not every garrison deals AoE skill damage, so I'm not going to take that. With the weapon, it increases all damage by 9% within 3 seconds after a skill release. I'll obviously take that. And then with boots, it's every 15 seconds reduces the defense. Now, I don't really like things that take longer than 10 seconds to trigger, really actually more than 6 seconds for me. So the fact that this takes 15 seconds to trigger, even though it's a high value of reduction, I would rather take something that I'm consistently having throughout the whole process, because for all I know, that garrison may break quick, my rally may get swarmed immediately or whatever have you. Like, I don't want to be dependent on something that's going to take so long to trigger for those reasons. So I guess to wrap up this question as a whole, at least on my end, and I'll let you talk about that too based on what I brought up. When it comes to the rare hones, pay attention to what role you're playing in. So if you're on garrison, maybe take something that triggers on counterattacks, since all 3 rallies can trigger it. Basic attack is totally fine to trigger that as well, because you're always dealing basic attack to the main rally against you. Skill damage triggers and such. It's a lot less restrictive on garrisons for taking rare hones. On rallies, maybe pay more attention if you're planning on only being a tank rally, to where you're always dealing counter damage, and so you're running like an Eddie or something. Maybe, again, it's less punishing and you can pick whatever, but really just pay attention to what role you plan on playing, and if it's going to be like in the field, as a rally, or as a garrison, to make your determination on if that rare hone is going to be more beneficial to you than, say, a flat stat.
Yeah, and there, like you said, there's a lot of cases where a flat stat is definitely going to be better than the rare hone in that case, and it is dependent on the hero and the role that you're going to be playing. Because I still have run across people, we've both run across people who had armament hones on heroes like Raigoro or on Thunder, who have skill damage buffs.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
you can't
Who's
use them.
dealing skill damage?
There's no one dealing skill damage. Or they'll have rally buffs on garrison heroes,
Garrisons, yep.
or vice versa. But yeah, that I'm definitely a big fan of staying away from empty power. I'm still happy that I'm probably one of the few players under 100 million that has tier 6 troops.
Yeah, yeah.
Because even in this last Genesis war, there were 120, 130 mil people that were asking for tier 5 PvP. I'm like, I can't take part in that
Yeah, yeah.
because my tier 5 is just filler for other people's rallies, and
Hmm.
my infantry is all tier 6.
Yep.
And
I know. I've seen that consistently as well, and that's actually probably one of the main questions that I get when I get reports from players to say like, "Hey, can you review this for me?" Is they'll send me a report and they'll be like, "Hey, how come I didn't deal as much damage to this rally as a garrison as I thought I would, or how come my rally got destroyed by this garrison, even though my armaments are way better?" And I'll take a look, and they'll be, they'll have a lot of red hones or whatever have you on their rally set. They'll have like a 6.2 mil rally against a 5 mil garrison. You take a look at the garrison, and every single hone is garrison attributed in terms of, flat squad attack, squad defense, lethality block, or infantry specific lethality block, whatever have you. And then you
Mhm.
take a look at their rally garrison, or I'm sorry, their rally armament set, and there's just garrison after garrison, or movement speed hones, all those different hones on there that which do zero benefit to you whatsoever. It's just taking up a spot, giving you zero benefit on that rally, and they wonder, well, how come I have a 6 mil rally armament set and I'm hitting somebody with a 5 mil garrison set, and how come they're destroying me? And it's simply that if your hones that you're going for aren't optimized and tailored to the role that you're playing, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're looking at a numerical
Really are.
power thinking I'm stronger on paper, and you're not even remotely close.
Yeah, I've always I wish they would stop putting power behind those numbers. I mean, I understand why that they do. It gives you this feeling of superiority with your set and everything like that.
It's a good
But
feeling.
if I can imagine it is. If I could ever get up to 6 million, I'll get to 2 million eventually,
Yeah.
and I'll know that my 2 million is solid because I probably could
Sure.
have had that a long time ago. Maybe
Oh
even
yeah.
gotten to 3 million even as a low spender. But I will pass up gold hones I can't use.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll pass up red hones I can't use. I'll sit
Hmm.
on purple until it gives me something I can actually use.
Yeah, yeah. I've gotten that question a lot too. They're like, why have you only focused on one set? And it's simply because it takes so much to get it fully optimized into the role that you're trying to play. I can't take rally hones. I can't take movement speed hones. It has to be garrison or troop specific. And even now, I'm trying to opt away from the garrison specific hones so that I can use it on rallies and in the field and such to try to get take that restriction off. So I hope that that's something that as a whole the community kind of takes a look at and pays attention to more, because while yes it is a punch to the gut to see a red home pop up and not take it, because again, like you said, that power climb is definitely something to chase. But I think that for all players, I think that more
Oh,
so seeing a better report and seeing you dominating your enemies is far more of like a dopamine hit than just seeing flat power that isn't really serving you at all.
mhm. And to your point of just focusing on a single set, just know that you are not alone. You are not fighting by yourself. You are either in group combat or you are in an alliance. And even if you only have one good march to send out to the field, that one good march can do a lot more than five mismanaged ones.
Yeah, yeah, no,
I have
oh, go
I
ahead.
have 2 good marches. That's it, and that's all you'll ever see me
Yeah,
bring out into the field. I
yeah,
will send everything else to someone
that's
else for their
that's
rallies.
exactly how we thrived in G1 to G2. You're absolutely correct. We played in that bracket as long as we did, and I only had one set, and it was specifically for that. It was just, if you can focus on one set, like if you find something that you enjoy doing, like field play, or rallies or garrisons or whatever have you, if you focus everything on that, you can thrive in the bracket you're in, nonetheless be able to compete in an upper one. And to Brain's point, it a lot of ARs and GWs, Genesis Wars, Archipelagos, Island Raids, and all those. I think people they think that it's all won through field battle, which in a lot of cases it is, especially if you're having to like reinforce from a distance and such. But if you put up a garrison, or you set up a rally that can't be broken, or a rally that just breaks everything in its path, or a garrison that just does not move, that like you win events through garrisons and rallies. I think people also kind of maybe miss that mark.
Yeah, you really do win because how many have we won on Garrison where we get to from point A to point B faster than our enemy does, and we can just hold it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All we need to do. They could cover the entire field with as many marches as they want to. If they can't break the tower, they can't get around it.
Yeah, yeah. If they can't open up that checkpoint, their allies can't come help them, and I think that's why we like taking the 1v2s and archipelago raids. I'm so excited for you to be a part of
Uh,
that.
I'll be happy to see it beat outside of G1 through G5 for once. Because honestly, I think I can handle myself against 100 mil to 150 mil
Sure.
in most cases. Most cases, because I know there's some people out there that have 150 mil and they're solid with their single march, and I
Yeah.
can fully respect that. But I can at least, stand up to those people. I run
Sure. Sure.
into the likes of HMB's players that were all averaging somewhere between 200 and 400 mil on a bad day.
Yeah. That was
And I
painful.
was like, no, I stepped outside. I'm dead. Okay. Um,
This just isn't for us anymore.
this isn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
I can get
No.
to a garrison with my tier 6 troops and someone else can lead that garrison, but that's pretty much all I was doing.
Yeah.
I'm excited to actually be able to participate.
No, I know it was a big plus for our group as well. I know that you stepped away when we finally had the chance to do it, but that was exactly why it was. It's cool that my garrison can hold up against those guys, but as an alliance leader, man, to sit there and just feel like my alliance members that I've played with for the last 2 years, and I consider great friends, to think that their enjoyment in the game started and stopped with my garrison, like just it that didn't sit well for me. Like I needed everybody to have a chance to play the game for what it was. So. Yeah, no. I think that kind of covers all the questions. Was there anything else that you wanted to kind of just spitball or throw out there or anything? I know that we're right at about 50 minutes now.
There was one you had the third question where it was brought up about how talent trees can be broken down. That
Sure.
actually gave me an idea to at least like piecemeal the different talents together and see which ones give what buffs, and I could easily like write something out and get that posted,
Yeah.
just so everyone can see what the stat buffs are, how it benefits you, like what rage generation options are, and
Hmm.
stuff like that. That shouldn't be too hard to
Yeah, I know
write
that I
down
know
and
that
break
we
out.
we have that rage generation calculator that you had built out and that we had worked on as well. So
There's so
um,
much I can add to that.
yeah, I know. There's a lot of new stuff to add to that as well, and a lot of new factors. So, yeah, I think that there's quite a few pieces actually that you could probably get and put out there. So, I guess to anybody watching this, just pay attention to Brain's channel. I'm sure that you guys will see a long-awaited comeback that a lot of people have been anticipating for a long time now, especially myself. Holy cow, man!
Yeah, the question is, what am I going to start with?
I could give you a laundry list, man. I've had so many requests to make videos and stuff, and I'll be the first to admit, as much fun as it has been putting out videos and putting content out because I love helping the community, man. I think that my favorite part of all the videos and stuff that we had worked on before was simply that, was working together on stuff. So I'm excited to see what we can work on next.
Yeah, and you and I definitely give different perspectives on things because I can give from a very low to free to play spender's perspective, and you can give one from the wallet warrior's perspective.
Ouch. But yeah, no, you're right. No, I get that. I get that. No, I'm excited. I think that we'll have a lot of good stuff to put out, and I'm eagerly anticipating what are some of the first things that we'll get to put out on your channel next. I know that the stuff that we've been working on for the firepower, protection, lethality block, in comparison to base damage and stuff has been a non-stop request that I've been getting. So excited to have you be able to put that out as well. So again, heads up to everybody. That's kind of something that we're working on behind the scenes. Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess that
I'm
kind
off
of.
by 6% on that.
Yeah, yeah, I know. There's a lot of moving pieces and factors to it, but we'll drill down to that. But yeah, I guess for everybody that has kind of tuned into this, I appreciate everybody passing the questions our way and giving us something to kind of work on with this. And really is a good segue to bring Brain back. Like I said, it's been awesome to have you,
Mhm.
man. It's I can't tell you how awesome it's been just to hear your voice again, man. This has been something I've been long anticipating. With so many changes consistently coming out, I was like, man, I just need someone to throw all this information at and hope that I'm getting, the right thing. Because I know that both of us, especially you brought it up, we have very unique perspectives to it, and in a lot of cases, different perspectives. Which is, in my case, I think I have something answered, and you're like, hey, consider this. I'm like, oh God, how did I forget that? So
No, I'm happy to sit down with you anytime. You did say you were gonna make this a regular thing,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we can get a schedule for this and get this set up.
Yeah,
Just
I
because I
think.
know there's gonna be a lot of people that have questions about this, and as soon as they see this video, they'll either want specific answers about one of those questions or have different questions they wanna ask just 'cause how in-depth we can go with some of this.
Oh yeah, no, and definitely anticipate that too for everybody that's kind of tuning in. Also, for future videos, if there is something that like, if you guys want to send us combat reports, I'll get that on the screen as well. This was again, we had a few questions sent in, so it was something that we didn't really need to pull up a video for. But if you guys want us to go over combat reports, any specific questions in general, please, feel free to drop that in a comment below. Message either of us on Discord or in the game, and then we'll get those questions logged. Again, Brain, thank you for taking time to do this, and to everybody watching. I'll obviously link Brain's channel down below, but odds are if you're on my channel, it's because you've been looking for Brain for the last 6 months or whatever have you anyways. So I'm sure you guys are very familiar with him. I know there's been a lot of eagerness for his return and such. So if you haven't already, please go down below, go check out his channel, give him a subscribe, and just pay attention to that content coming out. This series itself, I'm aiming to try to do this bi-weekly, a new episode every 2 weeks. Admittedly, I will be busy with work on some work trips over the next bit, so we'll see how consistent that is, but at the very, very least, once every 3 to 4 weeks, and again, targeting once that kind of cools down with work every 2 weeks and such, especially depending on how many questions we get and whatnot. So yeah, any last words you want to send on your end before we depart?
I will say that probably won't be making videos as beautifully as Z does. I don't quite have the editing skills that he does, but I'm excited to get back into making videos for you all. And if I can find a schedule for these events that actually works with my work schedule, I'd be happy to start streaming events again. Because right
Awesome,
now,
man.
Pompeii is not working for me.
Yeah, no, well,
Always while I'm at
Pompeii,
work.
can you do 3 UTC?
I can do 3
Yeah,
UTC.
yeah, okay. I just sent a message to the group we have. I have that set up. You're good.
Okay. So,
Maybe
it's
we
3
will have you
UTC,
for
I
Pompeii.
can stream those. 3 UTC, I can stream those. Right now, the 15, 19, there's just no way.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I want to get back into streaming, showing, answering questions on the fly for you all, and putting out content about some of the things that I've seen that's changed recently, and going more in depth in this stuff. I miss it. I definitely missed it.
Yeah, well, I think I speak on behalf of everyone. We missed you as well. But yeah, no, again, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody. And we will see you guys in the next one. Thank you all.
Thank you all for joining us.
See you. All right. Well, what is going on, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning in yet again. As the title of the video states, I know that this is something I've kind of posted about, but maybe not everyone has actually seen the post itself yet or seen me discuss it in some of my other previous videos. But can't believe I'm saying this, but Mr. Brain is officially back, and welcome, man.
I'm actually glad to be back. A lot has changed. A lot is it's given me a lot to look into. That's for sure, and I'm definitely interested into diving into some of the questions that people have been asking in my absence or since I've come back.
Oh yeah, man. There has been no lack of questions, and actually, that's kind of where this has come from. To kind of give some backstory to everybody on what this series is going to be like moving forward. Essentially, oh gosh, I mean, ever since like Brain started his channel, and I enjoyed working with him on his channel and making the videos that he's